For anyone who's been with us since the beginning, thank you. Wicked Part 1 was our first review.
Hi, I'm Luke.
And I'm Becca, and we're talking about movies like we know stuff.
Hello, everyone. We just got done seeing Wicked. I'm going to call it Part 2, even though it was... What was the actual subtitle for it?
Wicked for Good.
Wicked for Good, which I think is a lame subtitle. Just call it Part 2, because the first one was called Part 1, so I'm going to call it Wicked Part 2.
There is no Part 2.
No, there is a Part 2. They just didn't want to call it Part 2. But we just got done seeing this movie. Just keep in mind, if you haven't seen our first review of this, I have never seen Wicked on Broadway in a movie form, in any other medium. So this is my first time seeing Wicked ever.
Like in its entirety.
In its entirety, both Part 1 and Part 2. Obviously, I've seen like the major songs and stuff like that, and some maybe some story beats, but I haven't seen a whole lot of the actual production, if that's what you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind during this review. I might have forgotten some things. You might be wanting to type up an angry comment. Please don't. But let's start this off by taking a spoiler-free review or a spoiler-free summary from good old Becca.
Hey, everyone. So I am the Wicked fan, the OG Wicked fan of this group of two. And Wicked for Good is Act 2 of the stage show. Mm-hmm. I feel silly summarizing it because everybody here has probably seen Wicked.
Except for me.
Many times, but Act 2 opens up years after Elphaba decides that she's going to defy the wizard and overthrow the government. Mm-hmm. And we've opened on to a new Oz where now Glinda is a politician, the political hunt for Elphaba is alive and well, and Elphaba's cause to liberate the animals and alert the people of the wizard's deception is not going very well. Mm. Basically, Act 2 are all of the events leading up to the very end of the Wizard of Oz story, with Elphaba being defeated by Dorothy and melting. And you find out that it was actually a political play by the wizard to use Dorothy as the one to melt Elphaba. And there's a lot of other reveals in Act 2 that bring you back to the original Wizard of Oz story. We learn where the lion comes from, and the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow, of course, and you find out basically what's really happening behind the scenes in the Wizard of Oz. That is what Act 2 is. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, they decided to split a stage show that I think is under 3 hours into 2 movies. I think this is like 2.5
At least 2.5. I was checking my watch, not because I was bored, but because I was just checking the runtime, and it was definitely 2.5 hours.
I do think it's a little shorter than the first one.
Yeah, definitely. It felt shorter, that's for sure.
And Act 2 is shorter than Act 1 for the stage production.
Sure.
But again, for anybody who's new to the Wicked franchise, that's the best summary I can give.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. So we'll go through this in a high-level, spoiler-free review to start off, and then we'll let you guys know, as always, and then we'll switch into spoilers. So when that pause comes, if you haven't seen this movie yet or don't want to hear any spoilers, that'll be your cue to click away. So Becca, kick us off with some high-level, spoiler-free reviews.
So I was not looking forward to seeing this because I knew some people who saw it, and they were speaking pretty poorly about it. Mm-hmm. That they felt like it was really a waste of their time, with the exception of a couple of songs. They hated the new additions. There were 2 new songs in general, and I don't think it was a wise decision to split the movie into 2 parts. So I can see where those like bad reviews are coming from.
Okay.
And I think it's because there really isn't enough story to be split into 2 epic movies. Mm-hmm. And in a typical story structure that we know and love, it's you meet the characters and things are going well, and then there's a conflict, and then there's a resolution.
Yes.
But because we split it up, we start Act 2 and we're watching like the longest 3rd act breakup, everything just falling apart. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's very just dismal, and all the characters have left their hopeful university days, and everything has just kind of gone to hell. And that is what happens in a lot of 3rd act stories. Mm-hmm. But I found this kind of a hard watch on its own.
Yeah.
Because this should have been a chapter in the story.
Sure. Yeah.
And like an example a lot of people give for a bad split up is when they split up the 7th Harry Potter book into 2 movies,
sure.
and everybody called Part 1 Harry and his friends go camping.
Yeah, accurate subtitle.
But the worst crime I think that decision made was that it just made for a boring Part 1. Mm-hmm. I felt like most of this movie was quite a downer. It was just a lot bleaker. It was kind of like, I don't think you've ever seen Into the Woods.
No.
But
I know about it.
Yeah,
but I've never seen it.
A satire of fairy tale.
Yeah,
and the second act is when everything goes to hell and the characters really learn their lessons. Act 1, everything is wrapped up in a bow, and Act 2 is when real stuff happens.
Yes.
And because of that, the junior version only does Act 1.
Okay.
It's just Act 1. They just let the kids live in the fairy tale. And this whole movie just felt like the second half of Into the Woods. Like, if they had split Into the Woods into 2 different movies, nobody would go see the second movie.
Because it's just all downer, basically.
Because they're like, oh, I mean, maybe you'd go for the music, but you wouldn't go to be uplifted.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I don't find the second act of Wicked very uplifting either.
No.
And watching it a year after Act 1, which is glorious and beautiful and fun, and even when it's not fun, it's still fun, because Defying Gravity is a great Stick It to the Man song.
Yeah.
I felt like parts of this were kind of hard to watch, kind of a slog, and there were pacing issues. I don't want to get into too many details because that'll get into spoiler territory. Right. But I'm very curious to know your spoiler-free thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, again, I've never seen any full production of Wicked. And so I would say overall, my expectations were probably met. I tried not to put too much weight into the people that were telling us it wasn't very good. But I also didn't want to get my expectations so high because, if part 2 was just as good as part 1, people would be saying that or better.
Right.
So I was trying to keep my expectations in line for this, and I think that they were relatively met. There wasn't so many bad things that I said, oh, this is awful, and there weren't so many good things that I said, oh, this is a fantastic sequel. So
it evens out.
Yeah, exactly. There's some good songs in there. I think the story was a little whiplashy. We'll get more into that when we talk about spoilers. I feel like there's some continuity errors or some, so the movie could happen situations that we'll talk about again in the spoilers that kind of pulled me out of the immersion, I guess, a little bit. Yeah, and I think that's about as much as I can say without giving away spoilers, because a lot of my points in my notes here are like questions that I have that I'm like, this didn't make sense. Either did I miss something or am I picking up on this and it really truly didn't make sense?
Yeah.
That's where a lot of my stuff comes from. So, in conclusion, I think this is a good movie.
It's good enough.
If you've never seen Wicked like me, I think it's worth seeing. Maybe not necessarily that you have to get out to the theater to see it. If it comes to your local streaming and you can watch it at home, I think it's a perfectly acceptable way to watch it. I don't think the theater experience enhanced this movie, or this movie was good enough to draw you to have to go to the theater to see this movie. That's my take on it. So, thumbs up, but not a strong thumbs up.
Yeah. I feel like they should have called this Wicked : good enough.
Such a savage subtitle.
Because I do agree that I don't think that this movie is like a stain on the Wicked universe or cinema in general, how I feel about some other movies.
Yeah.
But I'm also not walking away floating on air the way I did when I saw the first one.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, the first one definitely has a really strong pull, a really strong drive, and it made me say, oh, this is why people love Wicked so much.
I mean, whenever I saw it, and I am not a lover of musical movies on average, that I first saw Without You, and I thought, I have to bring Luke to see this. And I was very determined that your first experience with Wicked would be on stage. And I was so impressed that I was okay with that being your first exposure. And I feel like that's the highest compliment I could give, is that a musical movie actually is worth going to see with no context.
For your first time, yeah. No, that is a really good vote of confidence.
But I feel like if part 1 had been on the quality of part 2, I don't know if we would even have this little channel, because I wouldn't have been inspired to have you come with me.
Yeah, that's true. Wicked was our first review, I think, right? Yeah. So that's kind of crazy, going all the way back to the beginning for us here on this one. But with that, we're going to close out the spoiler-free section of our review. So again, if you don't want to hear any spoilers, please click away now. But if you're okay with it, or if you've seen the movie already, feel free to stick around and listen to our more detailed and in-depth thoughts. All right, and if you're still with us, we're gonna assume that you are ready to hear spoilers. And if that's an incorrect assumption, well then that's your fault and not ours. So let's start off our spoiler review by having you, Becca, since you're more familiar with the material, talking about what has changed between the stage version and the movie version of this movie.
Sure. So I mentioned this on the way to the movie theater. But something that you wouldn't know as not a theater kid is that Wicked second act is reviled by a lot of people. And I'm not in that camp. I think it's fine. I like Act 1 better.
Okay.
But I still enjoy the show as a whole, but there's people out there that they hate Act 2.
Yeah.
They just find the story a little all over the place, the songs aren't as strong, there isn't the big punchy Defying Gravity moment, which is fair.
Right.
Now, I'm not in that camp, but because people are, that's where I feel like a lot of the skepticism was coming for this movie. But I do think that the pacing and the things they decided to add, they really show a lot of like the holes, like the plot holes in Act 2, and it really shines light, I think, on why a lot of people don't like the second act.
Okay, interesting, okay.
And I think a lot of that is really apparent in the pacing is so sluggish, and the pacing was sluggish in the first act, but because the story is more cohesive, it's more forgivable. But because the story is weaker in the second act, that whenever they were just showing Glinda walking up the stairs and going down the hallway, all these things are happening in real time. I'm like, good grief, get to the point. That, especially the conclusion, a lot of things happen at the end after Elphaba, quote unquote, dies, but doesn't really die. But in the musical, it's bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
She's melted. Immediately, Glinda discovers that the wizard is the father. She banishes him. She banishes Madame Morrible. She's now the new benevolent dictator. Elphaba and Fiora go off into the night, and it's all really, really quick, but it feels organic. It wraps up the story very neatly. And this was like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King ending of, and then this happened, and then this happened, and
yeah, there was one moment where they cut to black, and I'm like, oh, is the movie over? I'm like, there's no way the movie's over. And then it came back in, and I was like, they pulled a Lord of the Rings 3 on me.
And it just felt ridiculous. But as far as like the things that they changed from the stage show is, they definitely changed arrangements of a lot of the songs.
Okay. Was that to fit the lead actress's vocal ranges?
No, I think they were in the same keys. They stretched them out to have all these like 20-minute scenes in the middle.
Okay, gotcha.
That the opening song for Act 2, they just spread over all these
It did feel
scenes.
long.
And then they threw in all these little reprises as if people didn't remember what happened in part 1.
Yeah.
And I know that you're in that camp, but most people are not. Most people are like, no, I remember that song.
Yeah.
I didn't need like an overture
Sure.
to remind me. And it just made the opening scene stupid and meandering, honestly.
Sure. Okay.
I'll say, as far as the new songs that they added, the 2 new songs, the best thing I can say is they're good for a bathroom break.
Yeah. You whispered to me and told me which 2 were the new ones or whatever, and I wasn't really that impressed with them. They didn't stick out to me, I guess is what I should say.
They weren't offensive, but they didn't need to be there. I already know where these characters are coming from. I feel like Glinda and Elphaba are really well fleshed out female leads. It just seemed like another excuse to give them a chance to sing.
Sure, right.
And they're still incredible. They're still incredible vocalists. But it didn't add anything.
Right.
As far as additions to the story, they didn't really change that much. I didn't mind some little tweaks they did. There's no wedding that's interrupted in the stage show.
Oh.
And I didn't mind it. It added, I think, a little extra oomph. It upped the ante of Fiero betraying Glinda, that he literally leaves her at their wedding. That makes it, I think it made it a little bit more effective.
Okay, gotcha.
And I also strangely liked the addition of building the yellow brick road.
Yeah.
Because it showed how far the animals had fallen.
Yeah.
That at this point, the animals that aren't in hiding, they can't speak, they are being treated like literal mules, like slaves. And I thought that was actually very effective.
Yeah.
And it also gave a little purpose to why the citizens of Oz were even gathering. Because Act 2 just opens up with Glinda's like, I'm a politician now, and everybody's like, that's nice.
Right.
It gave a purpose to some of these like social events happening that, we're celebrating this new safer Oz and let's have this big party for our new infrastructure. It actually gave a purpose to them being there, so I didn't hate that.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
But because this movie is just as bloated as the first, but with a story that isn't as tight. I was actually starting to doubt myself. I was trying to doubt how well I remembered Act 2. And I thought, oh, wait, was that song that earlier? Are they chopping things up and throwing them all over the place? And they didn't. The songs are in the same order with the exception of the new ones.
Okay.
But because they were adding things like the road party, the wedding, Glinda's now in the song Wonderful, which she is not in the stage show, that I was starting to think that they had changed more than they did.
Yeah, okay.
So they didn't, but it felt kind of disorienting. It felt like, as a Disney World fan walking into Disneyland, and the same rides are there, but they're in different places in the park. So you kind of feel like you're in a dream. And I was starting to doubt that I knew the show as well as I did, because it felt like they were chopping things up.
Gotcha, okay.
And they weren't. It was just there were like enough additions to disorient me. So that was kind of strange.
Yep.
As far as other additions, Glinda backstory of her being a child, stupid and ineffective.
Yeah, okay, was that added in?
That was added in.
Oh, okay.
At her birthday party, her parents give her a wand, which seems like something you shouldn't be able to casually buy for a child. It seems like it should be like a firearm where you need to be licensed to use it. So that was dumb.
It just basically said that she's obsessed with popularity so much, or people liking her so much, that nothing else guides her, essentially.
But I think what they were trying to do is to speak to her insecurities. If she feels like she doesn't have anything to give other than a pretty face.
The popularity is what drives her, and that's because that's all she has.
But
yeah.
Dumb.
Yeah.
Dumb. And I also didn't love the change they made to Nessa, and that's something that you wouldn't know as a newbie. So in the stage show, Nessa confronts Elphaba about how you're an activist for these animals you don't know, and I'm sitting here in a wheelchair. Why don't you help me? And what happens in the stage show is Elphaba enchants her shoes to help her be able to walk.
Yes.
And in that scene, that's when Bach tells Nessa, oh, now that you can walk, you don't need me, and actually I love Glinda, and don't take any offense to it.
Oh.
And then Nessa flies into a rage and curses him to where she almost kills him, which causes Elphaba to turn him into the Tin Man to save his life.
The Scarecrow, right?
No, Tin Man. Bach
that's right, Bach's the
Man.
Tin Man. That's right. Yep.
But in the movie, and I'd read that they wanted to change the storyline because they felt like making Nessa be able to walk was ableist.
Okay.
So I don't want to speak to whether I agree with that or not as somebody who is not in a wheelchair, but the actress who plays Nessa is disabled. She can't walk. And I don't know if this was influenced maybe by her casting or by the political climate, but in the movie, instead, they have Nessa be enchanted to fly, but it doesn't make any sense.
No. The way you just described the musical and the change that's in this movie, yeah, those two don't line up at all. They don't line up at all.
It doesn't make sense. And even in the movie, Nessa never asks Elphaba to help her to be able to move differently, to help her with mobility. She tells Elphaba, oh, I want to be happy and I want to feel exhilaration again. And Elphaba enchants her silver shoes and she flies. And then Bach's like, this is great, you don't need me. But what does that mean? I mean, so is she just gonna zoom around the house?
I guess so, yeah.
And already at this point in the movie, which it was another addition I forgot about, is that in the movie, Nessa declares that nobody can leave Munchkinland without her permission as governor.
Right.
And she does that before this enchantment, so Bach can't leave. And then Bach sees Nessa flying around the room with her space shoes, and he's like, great, I'm going to leave now.
Yeah.
They just botched that storyline, I think.
Well, yeah, it wasn't clear to me as someone who's never seen it before. It wasn't clear to me.
Why can Bach leave now?
Well, no, it wasn't clear to me about the shoes. It's okay, so she went for a little flying ride, and I guess I could have drawn the conclusion that, now she can fly wherever she wants to. But it happens so...
can she? Are they just magic shoes?
It happened so quickly. All she did was she floated up in the air and went, oh, my shoes, and then she floated back into her chair.
Correct.
Was
the implication now that she was happy so Bach felt like he could leave? Because in the stage show, it's very much tied to, you aren't as helpless because you have more mobility.
And
so
that
now
is
I don't
completely missed in the movie.
So I don't feel guilty.
I don't know what the driving force is for him leaving, other than just going, oh, well, I can't hide my feelings anymore. I have to go.
Which is fine. Maybe if they would have had, I don't know. Again, I just feel like they did that so sloppily. I think they wanted to convey that Bach just couldn't take it anymore. I think they wanted to convey that it was more about Nessa's emotional state than her physical state.
Right.
But I think they just messed it up.
Yep.
And if this actress or maybe like the disabled community found that storyline offensive, I'm not opposed to tweaking it, but tweak it in a way that makes sense.
It still should make sense, yeah, right. You
just
can do it in a way that it's still inclusive, but still draws the same conclusion that the stage show does, yeah.
Because this is an element of the story, is that Bach hangs around Nessa longer than he needs to because he feels a sense of guilt. And I don't think it really, I never took it when I watched the musical that it had to do with her disability. I took it more that he felt guilty for asking her on a date because he was just trying to get Glinda's attention or make her happy. Look what a nice guy I am.
Yes.
And that's what I saw more than as it being about Nessa's condition.
Right, yeah, yep.
And then he was staying out of guilt and then out of fear when Nessa becomes a dictator. But it just doesn't make sense. I wish that it was better.
Yep, agreed.
It was just a choice.
Agreed.
The only other change I really want to talk about that I was honestly fine with is I liked at the end that they show Glinda cares about justice for the animals. She invites them back into Oz. I feel like having Dr. Dillamond appear wasn't necessary. I think leaving him as a tragic character is more powerful for the story. That not that he dies, but that he becomes like a dumb animal, like he loses his ability. I think that would have been a stronger choice,
Sure.
not just to show him anymore,
Right.
or that he's beyond repair.
Right.
But I didn't hate that Glinda decides to undo this evil the wizard has created and just villainizing the animals.
Yeah.
I didn't hate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do feel like it made it weaker to show Dr. Dillamond again as a character.
Yeah.
Him fading off into the night, like the victims in V for Vendetta, is much more effective for the story.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that.
But I didn't hate it enough to tell people to not watch it.
Sure. No, I gotcha.
So those are really the biggest changes. And I will say, as far as like silly changes, the dialogue could be really silly sometimes. For some reason, again, this movie, they thought that nobody would remember part one or that maybe nobody's actually seen Wicked because they kept throwing in lines referencing songs to the point that I thought this should be a drinking game.
Yeah.
That if I took a shot for every time they said, let's see, I made a list. You deserve each other. The wizard and I, multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm off to see the wizard. We're off to see the wizard. That it stopped being cute.
Yeah.
Maybe once would have been fine.
Right.
But they don't do this in the stage show.
Right.
And this is a very iconic, beloved property. And those script changes were very live action Disney remake, which is the greatest insult I can bestow on a script.
Yeah. Very nice.
And thanks for the rant. I think that wraps up all the changes and my deep thoughts about them. So I think it makes sense to ask you, what questions do you have?
Sure. Well, I can just go through my points and I'll ask the questions as my points come up. So my first and major point that I want to talk about is the story felt very whiplashy to me. It was slow, but it felt whiplashy. Like I had trouble keeping track of who's mad at who and who's no longer mad at who and who is super not mega negative unmad at someone else. I felt like there was a lot of alliance changing that was happening throughout this movie. And I struggled to follow it sometimes.
Yeah, well, I guess more changes are coming to mind now that I'm thinking of it.
Yeah.
But in the second act, it takes a while for Elphaba and Glinda to be reunited again.
Yeah.
It takes much longer than here. Here, there's a lot more scenes of them almost immediately they seem to reunite, and it just takes longer in the show for them to come back together. Like I said, in the song Wonderful, Glinda is not in that song. She's not in cahoots with the wizard to bring in Elphaba. She is not there. So I think bringing them in sooner and showing, oh, we're still kind of friends on the side, was probably made it confusing.
It was like part one ends with them being understandably friends but separate because of the circumstances they're in. And then they're back together and they're still friends in the circumstances they're in, but one of them has changed a little bit and so they're not as good of friends. And then there's a misunderstanding and they're less friends. And then there's a betrayal and then they're not friends at all and they're angry at each other. And then they betray each other. And then they realize that the betrayal was because they figured out it was an accident or a misunderstanding, and then they're friends again, and then it's just there's a lot of changes to their relationship, and I struggle to follow it sometimes. I'm like, wait, are they on speaking terms now or not? I can't remember. So anyway, struggle with that. I just had to put it in. I laughed in the movie theater. I had to put it in my notes. Skateboard broom, dumbest thing I've ever seen. Why did they do that? That was so stupid. That was the equivalent of the Legolas skateboarding on a shield going in the middle of the battle of Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
It was the dumbest thing. Or no, not Minas Tirith. Helm's Deep. Sorry, Lord of the Rings fans. That was a bad mistake on my part.
Turn in your Lord of the Rings card.
Turn my Lord of the Rings card. It's ruined now. But yes, skateboard broom, dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Why did they do that? So stupid.
Because it looks cool in Tarzan.
Yes, exactly. So you mentioned the opening number and how it kind of annoyed you because it was a lot of callbacks to the other ones. I said, the opening number is good, probably because it's a medley of the reprise of the first act songs. So that was my note on that one. So yeah, definitely only good because it's a callback to the first song.
Yeah.
So I fully accept that the reason I called it good was definitely not a good reason.
It's good if you're Luke and you haven't seen it on stage.
Exactly. Early on in the movie, we saw Elphaba in her like castle thing, and oh gosh, I can't remember the scene of what was happening. Gosh, it's terrible to say, but I just can't remember. Anyway, her spellbook just whips open to a page, and she just automatically starts chanting whatever's on that page. And I'm like, did we not learn our lesson from Act 1? Where we chanted a spell and it did something we didn't like? Or like, have we practiced between Act 1 and Act 2? Like, why are we chanting the spell and we don't even know what it does? Like, she specifically says in the movie, at least, she says, I don't even know what this does.
Are you talking about no good deed goes unpunished?
I think it might be, yeah. It's like early on in part 2.
It's like midway. It's
No.
They're like
Then it must not be
crucifying
that song.
Fiero.
No, it's not that one. It's way earlier. Way earlier. Like before.
Well, the fact that you can't remember the context of it means I cannot speak to it.
I understand, and that's okay. Either way, she started chanting a spell and she didn't even know what it did. It was the dumbest thing. We'll edit in the context if I can remember what it is.
Okay.
Then when Nessa and Elphaba are having their fallout, where Nessa is asking for help and all this stuff, and then Nessa sees Elphaba's spellbook wide open on another spell page, and she just starts chanting the spells. Once again, we don't know what this does. We're just chanting spells out of the book of misdemeanors, I guess. First off, Elphaba runs over and goes, Nessa, no, stop, don't do this. She's literally sitting right next to her going, no, stop, don't read this. You don't even know what that does. You're pronouncing it all wrong. It's like, just close the book so she can't read it anymore? Why did she provide the least amount of resistance to Nessa trying to chant the spell?
It is, I think, a plot hole because they make it a big deal that the Grimoire is in a language that's hard to read and that you actually need magical abilities to wield it. And I'm not aware of Nessa really having any abilities.
Right. So first off, she can do it.
I think it's very much just so the plot can happen, as that it's supposed to be.
Definitely
it's just a moment of rage. Nessa's in a rage. Her boyfriend is dumping her, and he never loved her.
Sure.
And I guess the story is justifying it that she's in such a fit of passion that she can do something with these dangerous words.
No, I get her reason why she was doing it, but Elphaba, who knew that what she was doing was dangerous, did absolutely nothing to stop her from doing this.
She said no.
She said, no, stop, wait, we love you, come back and stuff. So, anyway. Also, Nessa was too bipolar. She was happy one second and angry the next second, and it was very jarring to me. Like, she's like,
I just don't...
Oh, I missed you. Oh, I missed you too. I'm right here, I need help. It's like, okay, settle down. Like, we just got into the conversation.
It's more cohesive on stage.
I believe.
On stage, Nessa isn't happy to see Elphaba at all. There's no sense of reunion. Immediately, she is PO'd.
Yeah.
She is, I'm an evil, bitter dictator. I blame you. You don't help me. Nobody loves me. I'm on my own. It's very clear that Nessa has become the Wicked Witch of the East as soon as, before anything happens with like Bach's unfortunate, we'll say accident.
Yeah.
That she's evil before that happens.
Right.
So it is clearer on stage.
Yeah, right.
I just think they did Nessa wrong. They did this actress wrong. They just didn't write her well.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. This is not a positive or a negative, just something that was a funny observation to me. When, in any movie, not just Wicked, it happens in Wicked Part 2, but in any movie, when characters do the whimsical spin around the camera like you're holding the other person's arms and you're spinning around or whatever, but they put the camera where the head of the other person would be is. Just the logistics of something like that. Like, oh, Ariana Grande, grab the camera and spin around in a circle with it and look very whimsical while you do it. Like, that has to be some of the most awkward acting in all of Hollywood, in my opinion. Just something that occurred to me while I was watching this movie, because there's 3 different shots of it. Jeff Goldblum, okay, singer. That might be a hot take, but Jeff, I love you, buddy. I'm happy that you're a Pittsburgh guy, but I didn't think he was that good of a singer.
I don't think anybody thinks he could sing, though. I've never heard anybody. I really don't know why he's in this movie, actually. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was an honest trailer, but somebody described it as Jeff Goldblum looking like he wandered onto a movie set in part 1. I think that's pretty true
Pretty accurate.
for part 2
Aw,
as well.
our Pittsburgh boy.
I honestly haven't seen many Jeff Goldblum movies to
Yeah.
comment.
Right.
I feel like I haven't seen his work enough to comment on his talent.
Yeah.
But he does seem like he's forgetting why he's there.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't know why Elphaba's there. He doesn't know why he's there.
Yeah.
So I didn't think he was a singer in the first one, and I still don't think he is.
No.
Him and Michelle Yeoh, who plays Madame Morrible. It's unfortunate that this movie has her singing more, because her talent has not increased in this area either.
Unfortunately.
And I also love her as an actress.
Yeah.
But she is not a singer.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit.
One positive, since I've been doing so many negatives, one positive I have is the artistic choice to mirror Glinda walking down the aisle and Elphaba walking into the caged animal room. The parallelism between the two of those is an excellent artistic choice. I really enjoyed that scene, even though I know after you told me that wasn't actually how it happens.
But that's okay.
But I thought it was an excellent artistic choice. I really like that.
That reminds me of another like cinematography moment that I really liked. And whenever Elphaba is melted, you see the shadow of it happening when you're sitting in the audience.
Okay.
But I thought seeing it from Glinda's perspective hiding in a closet was much more effective.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
Because
I can see that'd be cool.
you're watching it through a much more traumatic and heartbreaking perspective.
Yeah.
Because when people said the ending was a little bit different, I thought Glinda was going to find out that Elphaba was alive, which I think would have destroyed the ending. The point is that Glinda is never to know, and she is like the greatest emotional casualty. That for the good of Oz, she has to believe that her best friend is dead, so she can be the hero, so Oz can have something to believe in again. So kudos to something that Hollywood could do that Broadway can't.
For sure. This is probably another one of those so the movie could happen points, but when Elphaba releases all the animals from their cages and the wizard is standing there, there were some pretty aggressive animals. They could have definitely very easily killed the wizard right there, but instead they apparently all like ran past him. So again, that's another so the movie could happen situation.
Yeah, like that snow leopard. Why didn't he just rip his throat out?
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, just another so the movie could happen point. For the music, here's my 3 opinions on music. I thought the snogging song was good.
Like the love song?
Yeah.
The sexy song.
Yeah, between Elphaba and the Prince Guard, whatever his name is.
The pretty boy. As long as Your Mind is a great song, and they did a great job.
Yeah. And then I have trouble deciding which one is my favorite, but I think it's between No Good Deed and Changed for Good. I liked both of those. I think it has to be Changed for Good, but No Good Deed was an exceptional track as well, in my opinion. So those were my 3 that stood out to me.
I was more excited about you hearing No Good Deed Goes Unpunished because I was like, this is what they do in the Twisted song, like the Twisted musical. This is the Twisted song where Jafar is having his crisis about how all my efforts have just made me a villain trying to do the right thing. And that's exactly what Elphaba is saying too. And I was so excited for you to see the original version.
No, so that was good. Yeah, that was cool to make that relation. Yeah, very good.
Both phenomenal renditions, though.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I know it ties to the fact that the animals, some of them are so traumatized they can't speak anymore, but you did mention how they brought back the professor, who is played by Peter Dinklage, at least in the first one. But
no, he's played by no one.
The reason I laughed, and your mother actually leaned over and said, "What's Luke laughing so hard about?" is there were at least 3 instances where the professor shows up, and there's very clearly space for a line for him, and then he just doesn't speak, and I'm just like, they just didn't want to pay Peter Dinklage any money for any lines in this movie. So I thought that's what I was laughing at.
They're like, no, Lannisters are way too expensive. This is the most expensive Lannister cameo in all the land.
Exactly. And then, again, not a pro or a con or anything like that, but the gentleman who plays the Tin Man. What's the actor's name?
Ethan Slater.
Ethan Slater, who also plays SpongeBob in the SpongeBob musical. When he has his little rant towards the end of the movie where he's like, well, I hate the wizard because she did this to me. And I'm just thinking in my head, okay, SpongeBob. Because he just sounds just like SpongeBob musical.
It's very hard to separate an actor from an iconic character.
Very hard. I think a positive on this one, it was an interesting artistic take to not show Dorothy's face, but I think I agree with it. Like, you saw like
they don't show her in the stage show
some
either.
glimpses of her, but it's usually from like the neck down, or you saw her quickly running by, but it was only like the side profile and a minimal profile of her face.
Mm-hmm.
I think I agree with that. I like the fact that they kind of kept the original Dorothy kind of pristine in that regard. So I liked that artistic choice.
It also just minimizes her impact. It takes her, in the story, she's not the hero. She's just a random pawn, and it even shows how little she means to the main characters. Even Glinda just kind of refers to her as a problem.
Yeah.
Or an annoyance.
Yeah, okay.
Which I think is also an interesting take. Mm-hmm. It just shows that we're the heroes of our own stories,
yes,
but ensemble in other people's.
Yeah, right, exactly. Another part of the story felt whiplashy to me was the fact that the wizard is Elphaba's father. Kind of really it didn't have any weight to me. I guess it didn't not make sense to me, but it just didn't have any weight to me. I was just like, oh, okay. I guess whatever, throw that one in there, I guess.
I feel like I have to disagree. I feel like it means a lot because he's the reason Elphaba is green, because he had an affair with her mother and gave her mother all this like magic, like green, whatever, like jungle juice, snake oil he was selling. That's why she's green. She's gifted with these abilities because she's a child of two worlds. That's why she's so inherently talented. And the irony of her so desperately wanting to meet him and him being her idol for her whole life and him actually being her dead meat father, I have to disagree. I think that's a brilliant tie. And it's also a tie that not as impactful, but twisted, copied with the princess being his daughter.
I get that part of it. I don't know. It just didn't feel impactful to me in the moment. Maybe that's just short-sighted of me. This just comes from my personal preference. You know me. I like not perfect endings. And the fact that Elphaba is not actually dead, it removes some of the weight to me. Now that you've explained to me that Glinda doesn't actually truly know that Elphaba is still alive, that adds a little bit weight back into it, but it's not as weightful as if she just truly ceased to exist.
Right.
In the actual production. So,
but no, it's still very bittersweet.
Yeah.
Fiero's alive, but he's not a person anymore. There's still a lot of sacrifice.
Right.
I will say, comedic note, my mom has seen Wicked on stage multiple times.
Okay.
And she does not remember the ending. Every time she thinks Elphaba is dead and she's thrilled that everything is okay. And she thought the movie changed it to make her happy. And I was sitting there and I'm like, no, this is not different. This is consistent. Now, I do think in the book, Elphaba dies.
Okay.
And I do think this is a musical
alteration.
Gotcha. I don't think this is true for the book. It's been a while since I read the book. The book is vastly different.
Yeah.
But my mom has seen this many, many times, and she should not be surprised by the trapdoor or Fiero or them going off into the... But every time, it's like it's brand new.
Yeah.
It's brand new. But I mean, good for her because it's like Christmas every time. But I'm like...
It's amazing. You can rewatch your favorite movie over and over and over again.
On a positive note, it makes her happy every time. But this plot point... she cannot remember, but everybody should know that this is consistent.
Yeah. All right, I have one more quick one and then probably one that you'll probably want to comment on here. So, not a positive or a negative, but Jeebus, that transition into the credits was so stunning.
Blew my hair back.
Yeah, it cuts to black. Music fades out. It's quiet for a second, and then just boom, right in your face again. Bright white screen. Your eyes are overwhelmed. Your ears are overwhelmed. By the way, here's the credits. Get ready to roll them. It was just so dissonant from the end of the movie. It just caught me off guard so bad. I think you looked over at me, and my eyes were like a million miles wide at that point.
No, I was equally shocked.
Yeah. Jeez, that was bright. So anyway, and the one that, I don't know if you're gonna like this take or not, but I think Wicked walked so that Twisted could run. I think Twisted is a better integration to its original story than Wicked is into The Wizard of Oz.
I actually completely agree.
Do you really?
I
Okay.
do.
Oh, good. I'm glad we didn't have to have a fight over
The
it.
YouTuber that brought Twisted to my knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
he said the same thing in his review. As he said, Twisted is a better Wicked,
Wow.
where it is a cleaner, more coherent story. It ties in better. It ties in a way that you can't ever look at Aladdin the same way
Right.
again.
Yes.
But Act 1 of Wicked is very promising, and it is cohesive in the story it's retelling and the character that it's redeeming. But Act 2 is where things get a little bit murky, and I think that's what hurts the retelling.
Sure.
But I think Twisted is solid the entire way through. You're
Yeah.
never losing track of what's happening in the plot or the society.
Yeah.
That it's very straightforward.
Yeah.
So honestly, I completely agree.
Okay, good. I'm glad we don't have to fight over that one.
To wrap it up for anybody who's been willing to stick with us this whole time, I'm going to say that Wicked for Good / Part 2, whatever, it's still enjoyable. It's still weaker than the first movie. For me, I don't even feel like I felt very connected to the characters until the scene between Glinda and Alphabet Nessa's grave. That's when I felt like I really felt drawn back into the story and to the characters. But that took a while to get there. So this is just, it limps along more than the first movie, where the first movie just sails. So it's not a thumbs down. It's not a distinct thumbs up. It's fine.
Yeah, met expectations.
Wicked part good enough.
Wicked, good enough. All right, and thank you for listening to our review of Wicked. We're gonna put some numbers to it now. I'll go first so that I don't get influenced by your take on it. I am going to give Wicked Part Dose a 6.75 out of 10.
Yeah, I was gonna give it a 7.
7?
7 mostly because Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are still phenomenally cast. And they're still glorious singers. And their vocals overall save the movie.
Yeah. I would agree with
And I'm glad that everybody can see how it ends.
that. Yeah.
That's
No,
it.
there's not much more to say about it. Yeah, it's an acceptable movie. Like I said in the beginning, don't rush out to see it. If it comes to streaming, go ahead and throw it on. It's worth watching. But again, don't kill yourself to go see this movie.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe. Please continue to stick around. For anyone who's been with us since the beginning, thank you. Wicked Part 1 was our first review, so it is fun to finally wrap up that segment.
Very exciting.
But please let us know. Did you see Wicked Part 2? Did it meet your expectations? Are you floored by how less good it was? Really? Let us know. We're curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good night.
Bye.